KTN.
All right, Mbui, let's start with you. We're looking at the return of Pentagon. What is your analysis this far?
Yeah, I think when you hear the mention of Pentagon, it just goes against what the leader of UDA has been talking about. He keeps saying that we'll no longer have, tribal politics. Mm-hmm. Pentagon is tribal politics. I mean, where you have a leader from a certain area propelled so that he can deliver the votes from that area. So if there's any mention of Pentagon or an arrangement of Pentagon, it goes against everything he says. But then anyway, who believes him in Kenya anymore? Because he says one thing and means a totally opposite thing. I am disappointed that the head of state is spending time out there celebrating homecomings and launching and relaunching projects, as he's been doing since time immemorial, most of which after he leaves the region, all of them stall. And yet, at the same time, we've just managed to sort out a teacher strike. Children have been without teachers in their schools the whole of this last week. I mean, we are looking at the problem in the education sector is not over. We have our students in the university, our young ones in the university that have a model that's not working. Over 20,000 of them are disenfranchised. Will not probably, yes, they've been told to go to school, but eventually, where will the money come from for them to continue their studies? We have a junior secondary system, which will crumble because we require classes for grade 9 in January 2025. We don't have those classes now. We don't even have 10% of the classes required. And instead of spending time in the office and organizing, the country and managing the affairs of the state, the president is either out there dancing in homecoming functions or on external tours like he's just done. Finished a gig somewhere in Kisumu, went to Bungoma, jumped into a plane and went to China. I mean, that's a kind of leadership we have. So
it's for development in China. You're not convinced.
I'm wondering what development. Let me tell you.
According to the president,
and I'm going to use the words of the Kenya Kwanza leader. He said, when we come into office, we shall not be borrowing. The issue of borrowing is going to end with Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. What is he doing out there? He's all over the place looking for money. There's no free money, I can tell you. There's no free money, Yankee. All money that he'll get is going to be paid. So what we are doing is messing up the future generation. Education system in a shambles means the future generation is finished. When you borrow excessively, it means the future generation has to pay those loans. They are finished. What kind of country are we running? And all the time after the election, and William Ruto is an expert at that. He finished his elections in 2017 with Uhuru Kenyatta and started campaigning the next day. That's why Uhuru said, my deputy, anatangatanga. Now he's finished elections. After a little bit of a revolt, he's out there again on top of vehicles campaigning for 2027.
No,
when will Kenya settle down? For our leaders to work for
When
us.
will Kenya settle down? I want to hear from Churchill, but really, let's also just break it down for the viewer. And they can also share with us, if they agree with you, that this is all about regional politics, another campaign. The president wound up his visit, I'm just giving you a glimpse of it, by commissioning the Nyabondo Trauma Center in Nyakach constituency. I'm giving you details of this, not just another, facility. Now, this facility with about 150 bed capacity is equipped with specialized medical equipment. We're looking at theaters, Churchill, an intensive care unit, a high dependency unit specifically designed for treating accident victims. Now, we are expecting this facility to serve more than 5 million people from that region. You do not think this is something the president would be doing? According to Mbui, he's dancing in homecoming events.
As a politician, and Honorable Mbui knows this better than myself. I've never been in an elective, politics, save for student leadership and civil society that I've led.
Yes.
But in any political framework, people join political processes with an eye on what is in it for us. And I think for the president, having done all these, appointed people, it was, and it is not Nyanza, we are making it look like he just did all these things and left for Nyanza. The president started with the Mount Kenya region. The president went to the coast. Actually, immediately he formed the new cabinet. His first stop You remember Honorable Joe hosted him in Coast. So he has been across the country, and this time around, and I think based on the way they had arranged it, immediately coming after the unveiling of Honorable Raila as a candidate for EU chairmanship. AUC chairmanship.
Yes.
He felt that, with that timing, going to Nyanza, and specifically what has been called Luo Nyanza, would be more strategic, and you can see the dividends, the political dividends he harvested. However, we must also accept that as a country, we do not have money. The president may be launching those things. Some of them are continuation of things that were launched during President Uhuru's time, or new ones, in the hope that in the fullness of time, there'll be resources to accomplish them. But you remember, the same president, after leaving Nyanza, passed by Bungoma to check on the status of the stadium, the AFCON, one of the AFCON stadiums being built across the country, and said, I wanted to pass by and see the state of, construction or completion of this project, so that if there is any need for money, I'm leaving for China. And he actually said as much, that he was flying to China, whether he will be expected to look for money. What I expect in China, and this is the reality that the president must live with, is that there is no way he can accomplish all these projects without borrowing more. And that this is, taking the ball back to the Mheshimiwa, who is a member of parliament, which is the institution responsible for setting the ceiling on how much a country, and actually approving any borrowing. But the fact is that the Gen Z protests, one of the things that, motivated Gen Zs to go to the streets, and because of frustration, are the many, the president and his ruling Kenya Kwanza coalition overpromised. And the Gen Zs were waiting to see, there's nothing being delivered. No jobs being created, all these housing, affordable housing things, social health insurance fund, biting more than they could chew, literally, as the chair of the budget committee admitted. So I foresee a situation where, because of the fact that there is no money to accomplish all these projects, the president, could possibly be setting himself for another revolt. And this time around, it will, take us towards 2027 and could be dancing himself out of power if he's not careful. The other alternative, which I think is, and we are going to see a lot of that in China as they settle and finish the meeting, the number of, agreements that are going to be signed, we might, for example, with Raila present in the team, see, an understanding to take the standard gauge railway all the way to Kisumu, because now, unlike before during Uhuru's time, when China declined because Uganda had not made a commitment to bring their side of the SGR towards the border with Kenya, now that agreement is sorted out. So we might see a couple of new agreements, of course, loans and more loans. And that is the reality that the president must, accept. That contrary to the blame that he apportioned on his predecessor. Borrowing is a reality, because whatever we collect as taxes goes into, servicing previous debts.
No,
that's Churchill, the issue here is that, if you remember, the president himself is on record saying that they will not borrow anymore. And you see, that's why I agree with you that he's setting himself up, because he said they will not borrow anymore. But if you look at what is happening, since he came into office, he's borrowed much more than Uhuru did in the period that he was in office. If you look at the average borrowing, that he has done, is a lot more. And you see, other than the issue of corruption, which was also raised by the young Gen Zs out in the streets, there's also the issue of pending bills. That's one big problem we're having as a country. But what is causing pending bills? It is this arbitrary issuing and starting off new projects. So you go launch projects all over the place. In my constituency, the president launched a road when he was deputy president on the first term of Uhuru. That road has not even reached 50%.
So
it's
it's
stuck up to
incomplete.
now. Totally incomplete, so it's not value for money.
How much roughly? If
It was about
probably
1.6 billion.
All right.
And not even 50% of it has been done. The contractor has been crying, the people are crying, they've never been paid. The road, I mean, you know, the biggest problem when a road is, when a road project stalls, is that even if there was maintenance going on prior to the contract being given, all that maintenance has to stop because now a contractor has been given that whole site and that becomes the operation area. So you cannot even maintain it on the little money that comes through Kera. So that road is neglected. And people have to pass that road. Every year there is a demonstration against the leadership of Kenya Kwanza on that road because of this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, what we'll end up with is a lot of pending bills again piling. And what does pending bills mean? It means that Kenyans are disenfranchised, people have invested their money. Because remember, when you launch a project, it means that the government doesn't put in money. The person given the contract puts in money, expecting payment. So if you're opening projects, 100 projects, instead of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 that you can finish, then you end up causing the problem of pending bills in the country.
So what you're saying really, because according to Churchill here, we have a problem, and he has said it. I was actually going to interject when he said the fact, and you said as a fact, the country does not have money. Now you sit in an oversighting body, and also the appropriation bills, etc. They go through the parliament. You question, interrogate. You now even have CSS to come for accountability. Now the question is, do we not have money, or are we misprioritizing money, or also are we just but wasting resources? Because if you bring in the pending bills, we also need to align with the other issues. What exactly would be the solution at this point in time? Because the grassroots are saying we need these projects.
Actually, I'll tell you, almost everything you said is right. There's a lot of wastage. Uhuru said it. Ruto is just very careful not to say it.
But
there's a lot of
what do you
wastage
see in
and
Parliament?
corruption.
Yes.
There is a lot of wastage and a lot of corruption. And you saw what he did the other day after the demonstrations. There's also a lot of duplication. There's a lot of state agencies doing the same job. So he kind of stopped funding some of them. But you know what he doesn't realize? That even when you stop funding some of them, if they've already been given an avenue of collecting money from the public, what they do is they just make their services more expensive. Kenyans are actually, you know, the burden that has been put on Kenyans' shoulders is just too much. And for me, I think the solution is, first and foremost, Parliament has to work. The problem with Parliament working is that the same leadership of Kenya Kwanza, immediately after the 2017 general election, what they did, 2022 general election, what they did is that they procured members of the Azimio coalition, who are the majority. Yes. People were coerced, people were intimidated, and they crossed over. And people who are elected, when in the campaign trail they were saying we are in Azimio, immediately after they became members of parliament, were now saying we're in Kenya Kwanza and they were in State House, because they saw the fortunes had turned and Azimio had not made it. And that is what, you know, Ruto said that he wants a strong opposition. But the reality is further from the truth, because what he did, he destroyed the opposition. He's still continuing to destroy the opposition even now.
I want to come back to you. Churchill, even as you speak,
yes,
there has been, I mean, in our constitution, Parliament is supreme. They keep the executive in check, they legislate, they oversight. And do we even have anything as opposition in our constitution? Minority and the majority. This idea of, you know, politicians being the, you know, opposition and the majority in Parliament being bought, for that matter, is what is disheartening Kenyans at this point in time. Parliament should work.
You know, there is, of course, as you rightly say, traditionally, Parliament has 3 roles: to make laws, to oversight, and to represent the people.
Right.
Now, there was a time in this country, and some of us were quite young at that time, that Parliament was, you know, one party. You know, everybody there was Kanu. But there were 7 bearded sisters. Out of the, you know, almost 180 at that time, I think. The size of Parliament had, you know, 180 elected and probably another 12. Because at some point there were 190. I think that time it was 10 being nominated. But the 7 bearded sisters made life difficult. 7. So I don't even believe in numbers. Even if, you know, it is true that, you know, President Ruto has compromised, you know, some opposition leaders, now almost the entire opposition. We just need a handful of people.
All right.
Like Mheshimiwa here. For example, by now we should have had a member of parliament, preferably from the opposition. asking why the president has not reduced his advisors by half as he promised. And first of all, declaring how many there are. You know, it's like going to a shop and you're told the price is reduced by 150. 50% of what?
Okay.
So first of all, the president was not being transparent. He needs to tell us that currently have this number of advisors. Those who are in the know, tell me there are as many as, 50. And you saw him adding more. I know, for example, there is an advisor, former IBC commissioner, Gulei. He is an advisor on livestock production. Then there is an advisor on agriculture. I don't know how different livestock production is from agriculture. I was a student at Egerton University.
All right.
And I know that livestock production is a component of agriculture. Then there's another advisor on food security. Honestly, even if you needed advice, do you need the three?
All right.
So first of all, Parliament by now needs to ask a member, to ask the ministry concerned to explain to the country by how many, because the same president, together with the governors, organized a function at the Bomas of Kenya on the wage bill. And recommendations were made. I think if the president is not careful and is just continuing with business as usual, the second wave of Gen Z and Millennial Revolution will not stop.
All right.
With any, all these political permutations that are saved him this time.
All right.
Because he will have proved, and more so towards 2027 election, that he cannot just be trusted. You know, what we are dealing with is a trust deficit. And rather than the president build it gradually, he's continuing, with business as usual, promises and promises. But in terms of development, the president must, in reality, continue borrowing. What we need to ask is whether is he continuing to borrow in a decreasing manner or is borrowing in an increasing pattern.
I want to come back to you with your closing remarks. It moves very fast, this particular show. But Mbui, there's a gentleman called Morara, I believe. He said, "Twende kwa ground, tujione." And I'm going to say it in Kiswahili, just like that. Keeps going where the projects are launched, walks around. There's one which is literally a bush now that we have seen. And I'm curious to understand, as sitting members of parliament, since he started speaking on this matter, what action have you either taken, can be taken, in terms of following up these projects, even as the president continues to launch other projects? How far are we with the follow-up?
Okay, I'll tell you how Parliament works.
All right.
Parliament works through committees. And depending on which committee that matter is aligned to,
yes,
then that committee is expected to take up the issue. But now, incidentally, Parliament doesn't just take up issues on its own motion most times. It has to come from a complaint from someone, because we represent the people. If the member of parliament from that area has a concern, he can raise it. Like I have raised a concern about my road more than 10 times because it's taxpayers' money going to waste. So then once it comes to parliament and it is questioned or a statement is sought, it is now forwarded to the committee. If it is roads, it will go to the roads committee. If it is a housing matter, it will go to housing committee. If it is agriculture, it will go to the agriculture committee. And then now that committee will be able to give answers from the executive to the house. So that's how basically it works. I wouldn't know whether some of the issues that he's raising may even be seized of, the house might be seized of them, because there are very many questions. I will tell you on a daily basis, we'll get like 5-10 questions.
All right.
So there are very many questions. So I wouldn't be able to say that has been asked or not asked. But I want to say that the things he's raising, it's important we will also try from our own offices to try and get a list of the things that he's raised, so that we confirm whether those questions have been raised in Parliament through our offices, so that we can be able to give Kenyans a proper answer. It is true that Parliament is frustrated in its own way, and the main frustration is when it comes to issues to do with voting. You saw what happened in 2023, voting on the finance bill, 2024 voting on the finance bill. But when it comes to issues of people raising matters on the floor, that one is not curtailed. So we'll be able to raise and we'll be able to get answers.
Okay, I want to just give you 30 seconds for closing remarks, and then I'll come back to Churchill, just 30 seconds. Because the president made it clear, and you're the one who keeps bringing up the regional political political, atmosphere. And President Ruto has said that no part will be left out of national development for political or ethnic reasons.
The truth is that even when you look at what was being said in Luo Nyanza, the CS for Energy, who was my former leader, was apparently told that if you are going to do energy projects last mile, you must start in Ugunja. That goes against the constitution because we have to look at equity, equality, we have to look at regional balance. It was all a political game. It had nothing to do with development. The tour was not really a development tour. And my problem is that we have a regime that continues to politic day in, day out. And things are going wrong. These advisors that Churchill has talked about, it's true. The president has many of them. But you had the former CS for Treasury when he left office. He said he's having a problem of staffing. He doesn't have enough economists. But there are economists in State House advising the president. So who does president listen to if he cannot even listen to his principal assistant in matters of concern like Treasury?
Okay.
Yeah.
You know the exposés by Morara Kebaso. I was a co-panelist with Morara the other day when Zimi organized Okoa Katiba, Okoa Kenya Forum at Fungamano. And so actually what Morara Kebaso is doing is an indictment on Parliament, because ideally all these budgets, are passed by Parliament. All these audit reports come to Parliament. Parliament is structured, as he rightly says, into committees.
Yes.
We have a committee on investments.
Yes.
These are public investments. Then we have the Public Accounts Committee. How come that every other day that the Auditor General, the controller of budget, issue their reports, we do not see Parliament on site? You remember, Morara Kebaso raises his own money,
of course,
at times his own personal money, to fuel his car and go to this site.
We believe so.
We would wish to see, members of Parliament, immediately such a thing is raised, going to say, look, what is it that is going on here? Is it true? Because by now, Parliament should have been told, confirmed to the public that Morara is just an alarmist, because we have visited the site and seen the project complete. But here's a case where, I'm sure there is no single member of Parliament, including Mheshimiwa here, who watches, Morara's videos.
Oh, really?
And because, yeah, I mean, they do.
Right.
But none of them has even thought of suspending any other debate and discussing these exposés as a matter of national concern. That, to me, is very, very concerning. But, of course, in my last comment, I would want to say that President Ruto saying every country, every part of the country is entitled to development is the right thing to do. Okay. Of course, whether he believes in it or not is something else. But being a politician and an experienced one at that, the president could be just keeping his options open, for any eventuality come 2027.
Okay.
But we want to believe. And when his deputy says, his people, the priority of his deputy is to consolidate his stronghold. The president keeping his options for 2027 open, that is where they depart company.
All right.
But in terms of the approach, I think the president is saying the right thing, but we want to see those statements accompanied by action that leads to change of lives in the people of Kenya.
Indeed, not just talk, but walk the talk. I want to appreciate you once again very much for creating time to be part of this conversation tonight. The Executive Director, Kenya National Civil Society Center, Suba Churchill, and Robert Mbui, the Member of Parliament, KTN, for also creating time to be here. We asked you a question today on the big question, and some of you have responded. It's just but fair and important for us to share some of this feedback. We're asking on the listing of the, the JKIA, and we asked, do you support the move by the government to list the airport services to Indian-based Adani company? And for talking to us on X at KTN News KE and Doris Anki, Dennis Wafula actually just put it as a question. First he said nope, and said what for and why. All right. Warriors KL saying Kenyans said reject finance bill. No one wants to pay taxes at the same time. They want a modern airport. How? Okay. Kenyans just raising their concerns in as far as the relation between the current chaos, the state of the economy, and now the leasing out of Adani. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Also, do not forget to grab a copy of the bold newspaper, The Standard, tomorrow for sure. I want to appreciate the team members who made this a success. Push that got Cooper to end the teachers' strike is what we are, of course, analyzing on The Standard tomorrow. I wish you all a good night, and remember to keep your eyes open in as far as politics is concerned. You are the Kenyan, you hold the highest office. My name is Anki Doi Sambat. Have a good night.